All right. Welcome, everyone. And on behalf of Scott and myself, I'd like to welcome you to another session of the Wisconsin Bankers Association Compliance Corner, that being for the month of September. And this gives us an opportunity to bring to you a number of compliance regulatory items that have been issued since the last time that we spoke. And this time you'll be happy to notice on our next slide that there is not a huge new regulatory rule to have to implement, that instead what we'll be looking at are a number of different items issued by several different agencies. And so similar to last time, Scott and I have provided the links for you to all of the items that we are going to be talking about here in the next couple minutes. And so with that, let's move to the next slide and let's look at today's topics. So for September, FYI, there were two different items issued by the CFPB that we'll talk about this morning, one being an information gathering activity and another being a brand new resource for our bankers that are working with those who speak Spanish as their primary language. We also then have some exam manuals to update you folks on. Also, a new bulletin by the OCC regarding how to protect and secure information as being shared in a video teleconference setting to make sure that that information stays protected and secure. There's also FYI on the upcoming CRA examination schedules. And you'll notice here that we have an asterisk. We don't have a separate slide for those three different links to the new schedules, but we wanted to make sure that you were aware that FDIC has issued both the last quarter of this year and the first quarter of next year's CRA exam schedules, as has the OCC. So hence an asterisk on this particular slide, but there is not a separate slide on that particular topic because it's just a statement of fact that those are out. So a little bit unusual there, but wanted to give you a heads up. But finally, we're going to be talking about two Nacha rules that are effective this month, as well as some exciting information from the Federal Reserve's FedNow Services as it relates to instant payments. So with that layout, Scott, I'm going to turn it over to you if you would be so kind as to take us through the first CFPB item, please.
Sure thing. So the first item we have for you is a CFPB request for information. And just last week, CFPB issued this RFI about mortgage refinances. And what they're looking for are ways to facilitate refinances for consumers, particularly with smaller loan balances, and reduce risks for consumers who experience disruptions to their financial situation. And so that's what's summarized in those first two bullet points we have for you on the slide. And then you'll see more specifically, CFPB is asking the public for comment on targeted and streamlined refinance programs, innovating refinance products such as automatic refinancings that might be available or we're starting to see in the markets, and automatic forbearance and long-term loss mitigation assistance. So again, we have that outline in the bullets here. And of course, all this is in the RFI and the press release that CFPB issued with summaries. But to kind of summarize it in a nutshell here for you, what CFPB is looking at are the benefits of refinancings. And so this is in terms of household financial stability and overall loss mitigation assistance, kind of as a tool that is available and how to provide that to consumers. And so where the request then, with that in mind, appears to be coming from is a desire on CFPB's behalf to facilitate more beneficial refinances, particularly where consumers may not take advantage of it or may not have access to it. It also appears that during the pandemic and subsequent refinance opportunities, the CFPB came to these conclusions after noticing certain trends with particular classes of customers and smaller mortgages those who did not take advantage of those refinances. So with those scenarios in mind and CFPB's concerns, those are all what are outlined in the RFI. So for further details on that, take a look at that request for information, which again is going to be in the description below and the links to there. But hopefully that summarizes why CFPB put this out and what they're looking for. But with that, I'll turn it over to Heather for our second CFPB item.
Super. Thanks, Scott. So we also wanted to make sure that you were aware of a new resource that the CFPB has released as it relates to preventing elder financial abuse. And we've included the link directly below so that you can pull that and print that off and use that or put it on your website. But many of you look for consumer-facing disclosures or consumer-facing information, and especially consumer-facing information that might be in another language. And here, the CFPB has created a very helpful guide in Spanish. So for those of you that have Spanish-speaking customers or families that are in your area, this would be a helpful resource, and it would be a trusted resource because you know that's been created from an agency that is consumer facing and a regulatory agency. So what you'll find in particular with respect to this guide is that it will include information about how to prevent, how one can recognize, how one could record the unfortunate circumstance, and more importantly, how anyone can report the elder financial abuse. So those tips are very, very helpful. Again, this is an item that is free. You can pull it right off of the CFPB's website. It's a nice companion piece to the English-speaking guide that's also out there as well. So make sure that your marketing folks are aware of that guide and can use it then accordingly with your community, with your customer base. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Scott to walk us through some exam manual updates that you guys should be aware of.
Yeah, thanks, Heather. So just a really quick slide here to show some revisions to two of FDIC's exam manuals. And so what we have here is FDIC's Risk Management Manual of Exam Policies, which has been revised with a new capital planning section, which also includes instructions for CECL and CBLR. And then also FDIC's Consumer Compliance Exam Manual, which was updated to incorporate certain TCPA requirements, which we've had for some time now, but has now been incorporated into the manual. So really quick on that one, and I will kick it back over to Heather for a OCC Bulletin update.
Thanks, Scott. And this is another quick one to make sure that you're aware about. Again, we've got the link for you as accompanying the video. Here we have OCC that's issued a bulletin to make sure that their regulated financial institutions know of the system requirements that they would like to see in place when the bank has its own teleconferencing service, that there's been communications occurring between the bank and OCC. So OCC is really trying to protect the non-public information that's being shared with its banks. So that could be examination information, that could be enforcement information, that could be any other types of investigations, even CAMELS ratings that are being discussed between OCC staff and bank. And so if that applies to you folks, anyone here on the listening to the video, where you have an in-house video conferencing service, you want to make sure that the components that are within that service meet what OCC is wanting to see for security purposes. That meaning that you've got a way to limit who has access to log into the call, to make sure that the information that's being shared is being sent in an encrypted way, to make sure that there isn't a way to videotape the recording or to otherwise scrape the screen of information, again, as a way to protect the OCC shared information that is meant to be just for the bank and not public. So take a look at that particular bulletin for the facts and just be aware of it in the event you're running your own teleconferencing service. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Scott for some Nacha information.
All right. Yeah. So we have 2 slides here with Nacha rule updates. And while we're not ACH experts and we know that you have separate resources that you go to ACH, these updates are significant. So we did want to bring them to your attention and, of course, provide the links for further inspection and further resources for you to manage and work with those resources on to the extent that they may affect you. So on these next couple slides, first here we have on slide 7 are a set of rules to clarify the roles and responsibilities of third-party senders. And these rules then address the relationships and requirements for third-party senders, including nested third-party senders and definitions for what a third-party sender is and what a nested third-party sender is. Then there's also requirements that apply not only to nested third-party senders, but all third-party senders within those definitions that are laid out, requirements for risk assessments that need to be conducted by those senders. Then we also have a second new Nacha rule here, defining and standardizing microentry. And this applies to microentry formatting and practices. So again, we get a new definition here of what microentries are, standardizing those entry requirements, origination practices. And what you'll find as you look at these rules is they're going to come in 2 phases. So those first sets of what a microentry is and how we enter them, what our practices are going to be, are coming, have already come this month. And then next year, there are going to be fraud requirements that come into play for microentries, again, within the set of definitions that we'll have been working with. And those are going to require various detection and monitoring requirements, again, relates to those microentries. So with both of these new rules, again, would recommend checking those links in the description below, as Nacha does have great resources for both of these. So that link in the description, you'll find a landing page for each rule, which includes there's a detailed summary. There's a 1-page summary as well, just a snapshot, a quick glance. There are videos as well discussing these, talking about what it's about, the why, the how, the what. And then again, more specific details if you want to get into it, including technical and other components. So take a look at those links. But we wanted to bring those 2 rules to your attention, both on slide 7 and slide 8 for you. But now I am going to turn it back over to Heather to cover the FedNow service on slide 9.
Right. We have one more thing that Scott and I wanted to make sure was on your radar, and that being the new services that FedNow is going to be releasing here very shortly. So they're in testing phases right now, but in 2023, they'll be then released to everybody else for use. But it's a new version, or a new resource, I should say, of these instant payments. So this is going to allow for the peer-to-peer transfers from financial institution to financial institution and business to business. So it's actually going to be something similar to what many of you are using now through Zelle and through other types of providers, but this will be something that the FedNow service suite will be offering. So in the materials that we have included in the video here are a landing page information, and then through that landing page, there is a whole host of other information pieces, videos, background information, processing information, and including operational changes to the operating circular. You'll see that the operating circular number 8 has been updated to accommodate these new types of transfers. And so they've been very thorough with their process on this. And if you've not taken a look yet at those services, certainly something to consider as we move towards 2023 and offering instant payments in a new light. So with that, Scott, I'll turn it back to you for the resource page, please.
All right. And just to wrap up, we again wanted to mention the tools and resources that are available through the WBA Legal Department, including new resources on our compliance page. Again, we've updated that page to include some new sections, new frequently asked questions, new toolkits, in addition to the publications and training opportunities that have all been available. Now all of that is aggregated onto the webpage where Heather and I are updating that regularly with new information and trying to keep that fresh month to month, where you can, of course, also find this new video series, the Compliance Corner. This video, along with past videos, will be on that section as well. And then lastly, don't forget to give us a call or give us an email whenever you have questions at 608-441-1200 or WBAlegal@wisbank.com. You can find the phone number, the email, and the link to our compliance page on the previous slides of this presentation as well. So take a look at that. We look forward to hearing from you, and we will see you all next month.